Hello, my name is Richard Santos, and I grew up in South Texas in a town called McAllen, Texas. And I was born a few miles away from there in Brownsville, Texas, where the Rio Grande empties into the Gulf of Mexico. I am a professor at the University of New Mexico, Department of Economics. That's my main title. I work with several other um, affiliated centers on campus and teaching centers. I work with a program called the Combined BA/MD program that trains undergraduate students and prepares them for medical school. And I'm also associated with the Southwest Hispanic Research Institute. Well, I'm basically a professor. That's where the day starts. And to that end, I'm engaged in teaching. I'm teaching a year one introductory to economics class, and I'm teaching an upper division labor economics class. And so teaching is part of my daily endeavors. I communicate with students through email and face to face and meet with them and give advice. But probably my biggest responsibility is really to advance our knowledge of economics and some of our social problems. And so, to that end, I'm engaged on research issues, and I'm involved with mentoring several of our PhD students. In the past, that included writing research grants and trying to find funding for issues. So, for example, one of the issues that we looked at was the school to work transition, where high school kids, once they graduate, do they make a transition back to school, or do they basically engage in work opportunities, and looking at that whether that's a smooth transition from school to work. The favorite part of my job um, is mentoring students, and I think part of that is doing research with them, and I get very excited about that. And basically looking at things that people would not look at, generally as economics. So most people think of economics. Oh, give me some tips on the stock market. Tell me how much money I can make. Whether this business is worthwhile. And certainly economics addresses some of those issues. But for me, the fun part has been writing a paper, for example, on what determines obesity among elementary kids, and looking at the economics there. And that is looking at what are the social determinants of obesity? How is it, does it vary? And so when I get some of our undergraduate students involved, and when our graduate students looking at data there, and really dealing with a serious social problem, it's not a straight path that one generally assumes. Oh yeah, in some families maybe that's the case, but um, as I looked at it, luckily there were my older brother went to college, and I think that helps. My parents did not, but my parents were very supportive of education. We've had uncles who went on to schools, were in a sense I consider some of them in a way trailblazers in education. And and for me, I think the thing is that when I was in high school, I think economics, at least, I still remember, even though and I did some calculation, it's over a half a century ago. I still remember some of those lectures, and that was someone's spending is always someone else's income, and that remains to be the case. Supply and demand is still there. I was the odd duck, and the odd duck in there is that I don't think anybody ever said, "Oh, I'm going to become an economist." And so I just in college I was exposed to that in my first year of college, and that kind of just that those questions that we talked about earlier today uh, resonated, and we were talking about those issues, and so I did well in those classes, and so um, I um, I graduated. It's a little unusual. I graduated in 3 years, and so in many ways, my family teases me, and they say, "Well, you never got out of college," and that's not necessarily true, because I think economics did offer me some opportunities, but I always came back to my fundamentals. I've run healthcare clinics. I've worked in medical schools. I've worked in state government. Um, there's a lot of opportunities that one can do with a PhD in economics, and including working for government, private business, private sector. But if you're looking at a professor job, then I think you really have to be very investigative. You have to look at research. You have to look at teaching, working with students. Um, it's a long process. It's a long process. I think it takes about 5 to 6 years to get your PhD beyond your undergraduate degree. So uh, it goes by quickly, but it certainly, I think people need to be prepared for that. That the early bird gets the worm, but the second mouse gets the cheese. And so sometimes you gotta just kind of sometimes you got to be patient, and you gotta listen, and you gotta think things out. Don't be sometimes we make decisions too hastily, and so I probably suffer from that I tend to maybe uh, probably agonize and delay over decisions, but at the end you kind of live with it. And I think that's kind of the one of the key wisdoms I have to folks is just kind of you know and I think that also goes with trying to understand individuals. Sometimes it's better to understand than be understood. You're trying to get your point of view across. Yeah, that's important, but sometimes listening, I think, is very key. And then the other piece of wisdom that I would have, having you know had a long career, like I said, over half a century now, nearly close to that, is I look at it and I just think that, in economics, there's a phrase that goes, you can't time the market. In other words, yeah, I wish I'd bought that stock a long time ago, or gee, I got to sell now. And you got to look down the road. And I think looking down the road, to me and to high school students, to you who was thinking about your life in here, is really, you just got to be like the old Boy Scout motto says, is take advantage of the opportunities you have, and be prepared.